Position us with a brief meditative piece just to gather us again prayerfully. This is a piece that was done by the music director at Burke Presbyterian when I was their interim. And Roxanna might have some stories about the early days of BPC where she is fondly remembered. But this was the first Christmas of COVID tide when we were trying to figure out how to do things. And this was the choir. And it's one of the most beautiful little recordings that I have seen. And I want to share it with you as a way to gather ourselves peacefully. We're going to.
Can you get back to you and then mute yourself? The screen shares are doing fine.
Okay. Let's see. Come here. It's so good to have tech support. Thank you. I share that for two reasons. First, because I find it powerful and profoundly beautiful. But second, because that was put together for Christmas Eve of 2020, of 2021, whatever the first Christmas was. It's like, what is time post-COVID? Anyway, in early April or late March of 2020, when I gathered the staff on Zoom from Burke Presbyterian Church, and we talked about what we could do, our music director, who is an incredibly talented woman, was pretty certain that there was not a single thing for her ministry to do during the time of COVID. You know, you couldn't sing together. Yeah, they've got a flute choir. They're certainly not going to get together and blow air at each other. And she was pretty bereft. Like, we can't sing together. There's nothing for me to do. And that was in March. And by Christmas, they were doing this. And I loved that. That, to me, that was just this incredibly powerful yes and. Yes, we've got this pandemic that has restricted so much of what we know, but we know that we still worship a loving God. We follow the way of Jesus, and we will find a way to praise God. We will find a way to lift up beauty in the midst of all this ugliness when we don't know how. I adore our music director there. She's really fantastic. She is, and would say this to you, not really technologically adept. So imagining doing this early in COVID was unimaginable for her. And yet, through collaboration and conversation with other people who were trying to make it through the same time, she found a capacity in the community and in herself to help equip and empower the saints to praise God beautifully. We can do so much more than we ever think we can. And that extends beyond our technological adeptness or lack thereof for doing worship. It extends into our mission in the world. We can do so much more than we think we can if we are willing to say, yes, and let's move with this situation and build something beautiful out of it. So I want to start. We've talked a lot about peace, and we talked with a lot of different images of peace. I want to invite you, and to folks on Zoom, I invite you into the exact same experience, and we might do some breaking out rooms if I'm not sure. I can only see myself, which is a frightening thing. So I don't know how many people are participating. Okay, thank you. They're all behind me. Y'all are all in front of me. They're all behind me. It is a weird place to be. I invite you on your own, just internally, for about a minute or so, to think about what is peace for you. So just in our own heads for about a minute. Now, in the room, and if we can make this work with breakouts, we'll see. Get in pairs, and I will leave it. Y'all can figure that out. Get in pairs and share for a couple of minutes what it was that you were thinking about. What is it? What is peace to you? So we'll share in pairs for just a couple of minutes. And if it's possible to... Okay, we're going to randomly... So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 hugs. Okay, we're going to put you in Zoom in a couple of different breakouts. So when you get an invitation to go to a breakout, please accept it, and you'll pop in with somebody. Louisa, are you there? Can you unmute yourself? Welcome back.
Thank you.
It's a whole lot easier to get people on Zoom to come back than it is to get people in real space. So it's going to be a minute. Okay, friends, the Zoom crowd is very cooperative and instantly got silent. It's because I can mute them. So where's my remote control for? I want to bring you back. Thank you. Yeah, it is always easier to control the Zoom crowd than it is real people in real space. It's always like herding cats. What were some of the things that you heard or shared? What are some of the things that make for peace? What does peace mean for y'all? And folks on Zoom, feel free to chime in or use the chat to share your thoughts as well. What are some of the things that came up in your conversations?
I just think it's just quiet times and there's a complete lack of negative thoughts.
So quiet time, I'm going to repeat these so that the folks on Zoom can hear. So quiet times where there's a complete lack of negative thoughts or inputs.
Shimmer of electricity or energy.
Ooh, a shimmer of electricity or energy. Cool. There's a guy on the staff at Massanetta who's a facilities person who has apparently had some pretty significant shocks, like several times. And the rule out there right now is no trips to the ER for electrocution. So I'm not going to share that image of peace with him, but I love that sense of the spirit moving in our midst, right? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I like what you said about obviously war is not peace but creativity, and I feel like for me, some of the things in our broken world make me angry and frustrated and feel helpless, and that's not peace. But thinking up something you can do and then doing it personally gives me peace, because then I feel like I can let go of that anger and frustration and just feel like this may not work, but I'm doing what I can. I'm doing the best thing I can think of,
Yeah.
So that to me gives me personal peace, It may not change the world, but.
Yeah, well, I thank you for that. And so to share it on Zoom, it was picking up on the Jonathan Larson quote that I used in the sermon, that the opposite of war is not peace, it's creativity. And engaging in creative acts can bring a sense of personal peace. The only piece of that I would push back on at all is the notion that you're not changing the world, because I would say that you are. One of the things that I, like in the conversations with the high school kids yesterday, I kept saying to them, we were talking about using your leadership, using your power, using your opportunity to say yes, and knowing that you will change the world. And that's a big statement to, particularly, I think, for all of us, but I think particularly for teenagers, to think you can change the world. But when I talk with kids, I always say, you have already changed the world. Ask the people who brought you into life if their world changed as a result of your being in it. And yeah, that's definitely, it's always a good laugh line, but it's profoundly true that Kids change the lives, obviously, of the grown-ups immediately giving them care. They change the lives of teachers. They change the lives of their friends. The question is never, for any of us, will you change the world? Because you already are changing the world. The question is, how will you change the world? What intention will you use to change the world? I closed the workshops I did yesterday with a clip from, I think it's a Pixar film. I'm not positive about that, so Pixar, if you're listening, don't sue me. How to Train Your Dragon. Have any of y'all watched that with grandchildren or kids? I highly recommend it. It's a great film. But the pivotal scene is when our hero, the first Viking in 400 years who did not kill a dragon on the hunt, is watching the dragon that he trained and rode being taken off by the elders to the island where they're going to kill all the dragons. And he's standing overlooking the harbor with his friend, and she says to him, and I'm paraphrasing here, so everything you tried to achieve has gone to hell in a handbasket. This is Pixar, so they don't say that. But that's basically the message. You've lost everything. You've lost your family. You've lost your friends. You've lost it all. And he says, thank you for pointing that out to me. And she says, why? Why did you not kill the dragon? And he says, I don't know. And she says, that's not an answer. And he just says, why is this so important to you? And she says, because I want to remember what you say right now. Because she knows this is the pivotal moment when he is confronted by this crushing reality of his life. Everything is broken. Are you going to jump into the harbor and drown yourself? Are you going to run off into the woods and hide? Are you going to say no to reality? Or are you going to do something? And then he says why he didn't kill the dragon was because I knew he was just as scared as I was. There was this empathy, this connection. I knew he was just as scared as I was, and I wouldn't kill him. And his friend has said, yeah, you were the first Viking in 400 years not to kill a dragon, but you were also the first one to ride one. What are you going to do now? And he says, oh, I don't know, probably something stupid. And she says, well, you've already done that. And then he says, probably something crazy, and heads off to rescue the dragon. And that was the moment that I cut the clip on for the kids and said, I want you to go out and do something crazy. Do something crazy with faith, do something crazy with hope, do something crazy with love, because you can do so much more than you think you're capable of. And to me, that's where congregational work becomes so important and so powerful and so profound in changing our world. Which is why I love the work that we're doing in PPF with congregations around the Guns to Gardens program, because congregations can do so much more than they think they're capable of. That program is really profoundly simple. It is exactly what it sounds like. It's hosting a gun turn-in. It involves some good preparation, and I think that's one of the things. I don't have, I'm not at all in charge of this program. I know it about that deep. Deanna Hollis, who's my colleague, who is PPF's Director of Gun Violence Prevention, she knows it, 6 ways to Sunday. She knows it in depth and in breadth. And she's the one who leads us in that work. She was the first person in the United States ordained to the Ministry of Gun Violence Prevention. And that is her pastorate. Her ordination in the PCUSA is to the Ministry of Gun Violence Prevention. Anyway, I got sidetracked by that beautiful piece of good news. The program itself is really very simple. It's hosting an event, and congregations know how to host events. It's what we do, right? We host all kinds of events. This one is a particular kind of event that requires some particular kinds of preparation and strategic outreach and communication to the wider community. But the event itself is exactly what it sounds like. People bring guns that they don't want to have in their homes any longer. And there are all kinds of reasons that people might want to get rid of a gun. And it's kind of hard to do that. There's some remarkably esoteric guidance around that. And it's sometimes hard to get rid of one. And, it could be someone who's, a partner has died, and the partner had these guns, and the surviving partner doesn't want them, doesn't know what to do with them, doesn't know how to get rid of them. Could be someone who has just decided, I really don't need that in my house, in my life anymore, for all kinds of reasons. Maybe they're grandchildren. And there's a concern like, okay, I'm not feeling so good about having the gun in the house with my 3-year-old grandson around. It's time to let this go. So there are all kinds of reasons for people wanting to let go of guns. There's also there's training and conversation around ways to articulate this to the community. There's specific training around how the piece of this that I hope someday to get trained on, because I really want to do it, is to learn how to use this highfalutin chop saw that cuts up guns. I really want to, it just looks like so much fun and sparks fly, and it's really photogenic. And I want to do that for no other reason than the cool factor of running the saw. But getting trained on how to do that, connecting with a firearms expert to make sure that the gun that you're getting ready to stick into this high speed, yes, exactly, that it's not in fact loaded. That would be an exceptionally bad outcome. So yeah, damn it, Dad. Yeah. Damage the chop saw, kind of put a damper on the whole event. So yeah, having somebody who is trained in firearms to make sure that as you receive a weapon that it is in fact safe to cut it up. So the training that we do goes through all of that. We also, PPF, our mission statement is really clear that we see our actions through the lens of abolition. And that includes transitioning away from traditional systems of policing. And so we try really hard to make these events where there's not a police presence, it's a church presence. And my conviction out of watching this grow over the past 15 months or so is that this thing that seems really small, I mean, we're talking in a country that's got however many hundreds of millions of weapons in private hands, we're not talking even a drop in a bucket. It is a tiny, tiny fraction of guns. But the symbolic power is transformative. And this is where I come back to creativity. Never underestimate the power of symbolic acts. I mean, I'm sitting in front of a communion table in a Christian community. If there's any bodies in the world who ought to understand the power of symbolic acts, we should understand the power of symbolic acts to transform lives and communities and change the world. So we're not talking about, Guns to Gardens is not going to get every gun out of every hand that it ought to be out of. But it begins to change the way people think about guns. And to me, the heart of America's addiction to guns that Jim wrote so beautifully about, the heart of this fundamentalism, is that when it comes right down to it, we are idolatrous. We put our faith in a weapon to protect us. We do not put our faith in Jesus Christ. And Guns to Gardens tries to shift that conversation by symbolically and really, I think, sacramentally refocusing our allegiance and our worship to where it ought to be, and not to this sense that power and security come from the end of a gun. Because maybe this is the part of the theology that the church has just, in the age of prosperity gospel, that we really have failed to acknowledge and proclaim. I have news for you. We're all going to die, right? The gun is not going to stop that reality. Every single one of us, everyone we know and love, we all will die. That's not the question. The question is, how will we live? And will we live such that our lives become a testimony to the faith that we proclaim? Or are we going to live in such a way that our lives proclaim a faithfulness to weapons that are designed to end life, rather than a faith that is designed to celebrate life and empower life? Well, I did really not expect to preach another sermon. That's nowhere in my notes. So what are other things that make for peace? Oh, go ahead.
Those of us who've done the training know, but the others don't, that what happens to the gun when they are destroyed, or that's not the word, dismantled, they are in fact turned into garbage. Yeah,
they're transformed, literally. They all get, I'm blanking on the name of the group that we work with, because right now I can only think of Works Tools, and that's a Chinese company that makes.
Tools to garden.
There's a nonprofit that we work with that actually does that work, and I don't remember the name right now. Anyway, they literally take the parts of guns and they make them into tools to use in gardens, so garden spades and stuff like that. They use every, as I understand it, they try to use every salvageable piece of the weapon. Both the wood off of gun stocks and things like that. The wood is used to make handles, and the metal is used to make the working end of the tool. I've seen videos of the work, and it's really cool. You can't get much more biblical, right? And that's like this. Isaiah pretty much named this and said, a couple thousand years from now, y'all are going to want these words. Write this down because it's going to come in handy. Take your spears and turn them into plowshares. Take your guns and turn them into garden tools. Is about the most biblical transformation that I can imagine, and it really isn't. It isn't this humongous, complex piece of work, but it's a big thing to take on. It says something. It says something in the community, and it says something in a congregation to take on this work. And that's why I started with the word that I used with the kids yesterday, which is, you are capable of so much more than you think you are. And I think that's true for all of us all the time. We because we're human, and a big part of our existence is always our own insecurities, our own fears. I think the most beautiful moment that I had at Massanetta this weekend was one workshop where, at the very beginning, there was probably a girl who's probably about 16. And how many of y'all have ever been invited into playing improv games? We could have so much fun, and just like if you were up for it in a minute, I'll do with you what we did to start. It's a totally silly game that involves improv games. So it was a very totally silly, ridiculous game that involves milling about and introducing yourself and taking on different personas. You start with just, "Hi, I'm David," in the most boring, flat way. And at the end, you're just milling around. Introduce yourselves as if you were cheerleaders. And I mean, it's crazy. There's a lot of laughter. It's a lot of fun. And this one, 16-year-old girl, just put yourself back into middle adolescence. I don't know whether you're introverted or extroverted, but imagine yourself as an introverted middle adolescent girl being asked to do this. And I could tell, I was watching her, it's like, this is really uncomfortable for her. She's kind of standing off to the edge, and I'm going out of my way to be silly with her, but she's still like totally, deeply suspicious of this entire enterprise, does not want to engage. And it's all about her own anxieties, right? Some about her personality preferences, which are fine, but it's also about this anxiety. I'm afraid to take this risk. Everybody's looking at me. I don't want to be silly. Just all of churning all that stuff that we all go through as adolescents. And it never really leaves, right? Inside of every one of us, there's a lost sixth grader searching for his locker. So it's there. But at the end toward the end, 3/4 of the way through the hour, we're doing games, and we stop and do feedback and encourage them to think about how you use these things that we're doing in leadership. And 3/4 of the way through the hour, she was one of the first people responding to every prompt. And it was nothing about me. It was just the atmosphere in the room. But she was capable of so much more than she thought she was. And it took playing in that context for her to get over her anxieties, to give into the game. So what are our congregational anxieties that keep us from taking on things that feel risky, that we're anxious about, that we're not certain of the outcome of, and that just feel big? And my faith in you is that you can do so much more than you think you can. And I'm just listening to y'all talk about this congregation, and what it already does is amazing. So you're capable of all kinds of stuff, and that's awesome. If every congregation was willing to take the risks that y'all already take, the world would change faster in the direction that it needs to change.
So I want to thank you for just changing the way I'm thinking about it, because I do get stymied by all of our lives, like all of us do, and then I feel hopeless, like I think most of us do. But the reality is, as Jim would say, to keep the faith, that this is just a symbolic gesture. It's not going to change. It's not going to take the guns off the street, but it is something powerful that we can do. Like you were saying, find something that you can do and be creative about it and do it, and then you start to feel better.
So maybe even just for the sake of our own sanity, just doing something like this is something that we can do.
Amen. And I'm going to repeat a bit of that just so that everybody on Zoom can hear it. But the idea that just doing something helps us through our own sense of hopelessness. And yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I amplify that perspective by reminding myself that it's not mine to save the world, right? That's already taken care of. I don't have to do that. Thanks be to God. Y'all would be in big trouble if it was up to me to save the world. But it's not up to any of us to save the world. It is ours, however, to change the world, to change the pieces of it that we can. What's the line from the Talmud that is a Facebook meme frequently, that something about the enormity of the world and its problems are, we are not responsible for fixing all of them, but that doesn't mean that we're not responsible for doing what we can. The Talmud says it much better than that. But that's the basic gist of it, that just because the world's problems are enormous and we can't fix them all, but just because we can't fix them all does not get us off the hook for doing what we can, where we are with what we've got. And I think it's the Outward Bound slogan is that the only way out is through. And I often feel that way about my own anxieties, that the only way out is through. And usually, I take that in a slightly different direction, that the way out is through, but it's not necessarily through my own pain. It's usually by way of accompanying somebody else through theirs. And that always comes, that comes back around to the empathy piece in the film that I was talking about, that recognition of suffering with others and being engaging in compassion and suffering with, and to be able to do that with someone else helps me through my own. And I think that happens in different ways for different people at different stages of our lives, right? Our calling is different depending on our circumstance, depending on our capacity in where we are in our own lives.
Couple of songs come to mind. The old gospel hymn, "Right in the Corner Where You Are."
Right in the corner where you are. Yes, thank you.
And
Yeah.
another one of my favorite songwriters is Tom Paxton. And he wrote a song years ago called It's Arithmetic, Baby. And he says, "There's a power in you, me, and there's a power in you." The name of the song, that power, is the power of two. 2 plus 2 is the power of 4. You keep on counting, it's 1,000 more. Because 1 ain't nothing but a half of 2. I need you, you need me, and I need you. And he goes on about how if we get together on these problems, we can solve a lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're on Zoom, go Google Tom Paxton. And was it, what is that song called? The Arithmetic song?
It's called Arithmetic.
Arithmetic. Arithmetic Baby. Yeah, Tom Paxton is such a wonderful songwriter. Thank you for that. Yes.
You know what they're doing with the garden tools made from the guns?
Different things, as I understand it. Sometimes they come right back to, like congregations that do feeding, and like the congregation I served in Arlington for 16 or 17 years had a garden, in the local food bank has a program called Plot Against Hunger, and it's both churches and other nonprofits and individuals who dedicate a plot of their garden and the vegetables go straight to the food bank. So for congregations that are engaged in that kind of work, tools could come back to do that kind of work. I
They
don't,
sell them.
yeah, that was,
They
so
sell
they,
them to support
yeah.
the work that they're doing.
yep.
I could just see these tools should have a life of their own that keeps symbolically carrying a message. So maybe they're given to some neighborhood or some person. I don't know. I could just see potential there to carry that message on.
Yeah, and that's that piece of it. I mean, PPF participates mostly in the preparing congregations to do the gun turn-ins, and it is a separate nonprofit that does the actual work on the chopped up tools, and they've been around for a while.
And I think, I mean, we asked that question in the training thing, because I was wondering if they came back
Yeah,
into the community, and basically it was, you know, their soul to support the work of
yeah,
creating them.
and
But they're probably sold then, you know, I mean, anybody that's buying them is aware that these are tools that have been made from dismantled guns, so they would carry with them that symbolism and that richness.
yeah, for sure. Any other?
And I guess I would think if we did this kind of thing, that we might want to buy back some of the tools, to have them.
Yeah, I mean, we think that would be a really beautiful way to complete the circle for any community. Yes.
I just want to emphasize that 5 or 6 of us, 7 of us, have already taken that training on Guns to Garden. And it's a 6-week, I think it was 6-week workshop series on Zoom, 1 hour. Yeah, 1 hour each time. But they are starting additional cycles of that same training. And so if there are people here who are interested, they usually have it in the morning before session. That covers the same material, so you have to do something today or at night. But very, very.
Yeah, we thank you. We are starting another cycle in January. I'm not sure of the timing this time around. Deanna's got some significant health issues in her immediate family, and it's going to change her availability for the work for a little bit during January and February. And so I know we've scheduled them, but I think there's, and I don't remember whether it's, yeah, that's what I'm getting. I think it's going to happen once, and I don't remember where we slotted that time.
But there are recordings of the ones that we just participated in. If, you know, we could find a way to show those again, because the information is going to be the same. And I will say that it was really powerful to see the congregations across the entire United States and the amount of work that they did in different places, in Texas, and Colorado, in Oregon. It was really inspiring. And I don't think it changes. The next time the same people, might be different people, but it's going to be the same story. So I think we could, if people were interested, revisit the ones that have already been. Yeah,
I have to check in with both Deanna and with our tech people who know where that stuff gets.
Yeah.
What happens when you save something on Zoom? Where does it go? Don't ask me.
A lot of that work has already been done. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
We've got enough experience with it to give it a lot of guidance. But it does, even with that, it takes a lot of work. But we're not starting from scratch.
Yeah, that's y'all are way down the road to being prepared to create a program. And the materials are there. We have got, PPF has a gun violence prevention handbook that's close to 200 pages long. It does a lot of this, but it also has a lot of guidance for faith leaders in communities in the aftermath of gun violence striking close to home, and just, all kinds of resources, and all of that is available for download off of PPF's website.
I just wanted to share too that Roxana has learned that Shepherdstown Presbyterian Church is getting ready to have their own kind of version of a Guns to Gardens event, which turns out they've decided to do it within their congregation, to reach out to congregants who would like to turn in their guns. And I think that's happening on December 10th. So you might learn that.
Yeah, cool.
Well, it might be interesting to the whole congregation.
I'll let you decide that.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out and sharing the conversation, and blessings on your work as it continues.
Thank you for waking up with us.
Keep awake that's what I'm trying to do. Thank you. Roxanne, you want to describe for folks? Yep. It is. Yeah, it's. Yeah, this was up through like 2019, and just the lists and the names and faces of some of the victims of gun violence in America. That is a sobering note on which to close. So let me pray us into a close. Holy God, we know we live in a deeply broken world. We know we live in your world. We know that you call us to live fully into the way of Jesus in this world. We know that you love us. We know that you love your creation. Help us to work with you in redeeming it. For we ask it in Christ's name. Amen. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.